Recently, as of the recording of this video, I read through the adventure, The House of 99 Souls. I will link to that video if you want to check out the stream. It's a couple of hours, but we go through most of the adventure. As I've been trying to come up with what I want to say about it in more of a capsule form, I've been reminded of the discussions that have been happening recently about read reviews versus play reviews, which is better, which is worse, which is more valid, which is however you want to go. There tend to be different camps upon that, but how that is reflected in terms of the kind of content that I'm putting out right now and what other people put out and how we've interacted with the material, what that means. In my case, I've not played through the material. I've only had a chance to read it. And I pretty much mention that in every video. If I don't, it's merely because I forget. But if you've watched any of my read reviews or their kind of read-throughs, what I do is I basically read the module and I'm doing it without any prior information. It is not trained or practiced or rehearsed. I just open it up like I picked it up for the first time and read it. I enjoyed House of 99 Souls. I think there's some areas that could be improved a little bit, but the good news is that if you're a GM, it is certainly not difficult to go in there and pick the elements that you want to kind of spruce up or give a little extra flavor and give them that flavor. And it's this element of the module that got me thinking about this read versus play review. Because I look at it from a read and I think to myself, wow, there's this little piece here that they didn't flesh out, or at least not as much as maybe I would like to flesh out. However, if I had run the adventure, I might well have fleshed it out. I might well have taken this element that said, you know what, I want to take that Orb of Souls. That's kind of the main MacGuffin in this module, and I want to amp it up a bit. If the result when we play through it is people loved it, how much they love because of the source material and how much did they love because of all the various things I'm doing and in what degrees, and what does that say about the module itself? Oftentimes when we look at having a great session or a great adventure, a great campaign, we chalk it up to the material we used. Oh, I had a great campaign running Wolves Upon the Coast, so therefore Wolves Upon the Coast is an amazing campaign. I actually think it is a good campaign, but what that's leaving out is the fact that this Wolves Upon the Coast is probably not being done in a way that you could tell what is the campaign, what's just written in the text, and what you and your players and your table are all bringing to it, all that additive stuff you're bringing on there, and then that's the actual experience. When you're reading, you can maybe try to intuit what that experience might be like. You might be able to guess and say, me as a GM, it'll probably come off like this, or I think my players will interact with it like that, but we don't know. And in the moment, we get all the creativity and all the energy of actual human beings doing something, and that is the final thing you get from actually playing. But if I were to review it from that playing aspect, would I give too much credit to the adventure, or would I give it not enough credit? Much like from a read perspective, I think, this is missing a little ingredient that I wish they would add in, and yet in play, I might just fill in that ingredient. How do you measure that? I don't think there is a way to measure it, which is why I think there's value in both a review that's looking at the actual source material and a review that's looking at play. And then hopefully if you can, and I know some channels are lucky enough that they get to run through stuff and obviously read through it, that you can synergize it into some kind of conclusion of here's what the adventure is giving us. In the House of 99 Souls, I think it's about 75% of the way there. I think you've got a decent, good premise. The setup is good. I think there's maybe a couple issues. You could probably work those out. I personally am not a fan when an adventure will sort of blanket say that just something doesn't work. And in the case of House of 99 Souls, because they want you to stay in the house, they essentially put a blanket statement of you can't leave. Once you're in, door locks behind you or closes, you can't leave. But they don't explain how that works in a game where magic is involved. I would prefer that I don't have to tell a player if I'm flustered in the moment of your spell just doesn't work. Why? I don't know. It's basically because the adventure said so, because there's nothing in the adventure about outside the house, really. So, yeah, it doesn't go. Now, I could probably, interpret it different ways or improv different things, but it puts you in a little bit of a bind. And it's not a great feeling as a player if I went ahead and memorized the spell. And by the way, it's not because I picked a bad spell. It's just been sort of hand-waved away because to maintain the convenience of everything being locked in this one location. So there's a few things like that. But again, you read it, you interpret it, as long as you know beforehand it's coming, which is why you should always read it beforehand and then make adjustments. There's a lot of other spots where I thought there's a lot of potential, but that the adventure doesn't necessarily use all of that potential. Again, it's mostly fine because as the GM, you can go through, and as long as you have time, you can fill up that potential to however much you want to. I think there's some lost opportunities to add a little bit more of a horror vibe to it, add a little bit more of a resonance to some of the things, because you don't, depending on how you move through the house, if you took a couple of turns, did a few things, you can get to the bottom and deal with it. And you're not really missing out on much just from a preparedness thing, because what you do at the end doesn't require you to know things from the beginning, if that makes sense. You can get extra detail, you can get a few extra things, but essentially it really is a very simple story at its base. And I would have liked if maybe there's a little bit more reward for really digging around the place as opposed to kind of beelining to kind of where you need to go, if you're even able to do that. The main antagonist, it's a little bit of a anticlimactic confrontation, mostly because there isn't really much of a confrontation, and you can do what may be the most obvious thing, and then you're kind of done. And you don't get the capstone to a sort of a rising tension moment that you might expect from this. Again, not necessarily a problem. Yeah, I'll go in and I'll tweak that up. But it was an interesting choice in the adventure, and one that I think I'd probably want to change. Something I really liked about it is the human-centric story, because at the core, what happened in the past that has set off the chain of events that has resulted in the House of the 99 Souls. It's a very human story, and I like human stories. I've really come to appreciate a story that has all kinds of fantastic elements, but that at their core, there's really something human going on. And you can see that in the house, especially if they start interacting with some of the elements in the house, the story that emerges, if they get to it in fragmentary form, and then obviously they put it together. It's a really human story, and I like that. I appreciate that a lot. There's a few inconsistencies. At one point, it makes mention of, hey, all the things that were killed by the orb rise and act in a certain way, but then there's all these exceptions that don't follow the rule that the module itself sets, and there's no explanation for why some things seem to follow the rule and then some things don't. Obviously, you want an adventure that is consistent, and there's a little bit of inconsistency in here, so I suppose I should ding it a little bit for that. But at the same time, as long as you can see it up front and kind of deal with it, and it's not a big deal, it doesn't change anything radically, it's just a little bit of, okay, that's an interesting choice. Was it a mistake? Was it an oversight? But, I can easily fix it. If I had played this at a con and somebody run it, let's say I had run this for myself at a con and I'd made those fixes, I would never be the wiser. It's not that big of a deal, and it's very easy to shift and change. If you're looking for something different than ye old dungeon crawl or hex crawl, you want something that has a little bit of a horror vibe. I don't think it gets too much into the horror, but of course you can amp that up as much as you want. Then I think the House of 99 Souls is fun. It's got good bones. It's well laid out. It's got everything you need. If there are some spots where I think, it just falls a little bit short, or gee, I wish they would have taken this a little bit further, you can do that. I mean, that's the great thing about a book as an adventure tool or as a gaming tool versus just as a book, is there's so much there that you can do with it that's not written on the pages. I don't want to let somebody off the hook if they put something together that's very shoddy. This is not shoddy, because I can always backfill it in. There's some point where you go, you know what, I'm going to have to backfill in too much. I don't think that this is one that I would have to do a ton of work to fix or otherwise do. I think it, like I said, it's about 75% of the way to where I was like, oh yeah, this is great. And I can just add that other 25 really nice art if that's something that moves you. Personally, I'm more in the focus on usability, clarity. The maps are good. The layout is good. It's got everything that you want. It's very self-contained, which is nice, because I think you could drop it in as kind of a one-off. You could throw it anywhere in your campaign. All you need to do is have basically a village and a house. I mean, you don't even really need the village. It's really just about a house and then figuring out how the players get to the house, because once the characters get to the house and they go in, everything's on and they can't leave until they've done something. It gives you some plot hooks. I would maybe tweak those a little bit, and I go into it a bit during the streamed read. So if you're interested in getting it more in the weeds, you can do that. One thing I want to mention that came up on the stream was there's a dedication to a fellow named Simon Barnes on, I guess, the second page, inside cover, I guess. And I wasn't sure what to make of it on the read because you don't know sometimes, dedicated to my wife who is here for all the support, or husband or whomever, or, dedicated to my late father, so-and-so. And this just said dedicated to our friend Simon Barnes, which just, I couldn't tell whether this is just something good. I wasn't sure how to read it. And I spent a few minutes kind of stumbling over going, okay, well, I don't know what's happened to Simon Barnes, something good or something bad, but I guess it's okay. But I want to just let you know, if you happen to watch the stream, that I posted this on a Discord, the stream to a link Discord. I'm doing the marketing spiel. So I posted it out there, and Simon Barnes himself chimed in to say they were playing it. And I was so relieved to know that they were alive. So if you're wondering, is Simon Barnes the late Simon Barnes? No, they are still the current and present Simon Barnes. That's all I've got, folks. Links to the adventure will be in the show notes and elsewhere. I know it's available on drive-thru. I'm not sure if it's available in print or not. I was shared a digital copy. Thanks for checking out. Let me know what you think of this adventure if you have run it or if you have read it. And I'm also curious how folks, where you folks sit on the read versus play review front. I think there's room for both. I'm sure there will always be both. It's certainly easier to read something than to play through it. And playing has its own pitfalls, not just the fact that you're not getting a look at the material by itself, but through an interpretation of the material, through that being played, but also in terms of just now you have a whole group that's interacting with it, and what is that group dynamic like? And there's a lot of, when you get all that humanity together, you never know what's going to happen. Well, that also means that a lot of stuff's happening, and it might happen in a session that really has nothing to do with the adventure, but it's all going to get junked together in your impressions of the adventure after it's all done. So I don't know if it's cut and dry. Sometimes as folks make it seem. I don't even know if folks really make it seem that. I'm just talking. Anyhow, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listen to this. Game on. Talk to you later. Bye now.